But we may have got some further insight into how Microsoft is going to be handling their first-party exclusives, especially after the acquisition of Zenimax. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So there was an interview on this website called Inverse, and it's with the former founder of Zenimax, Christopher Weaver. But he talked about his thoughts on the acquisition overall and how he thinks this is going to be for gamers, how he thinks it's going to affect the industry, and how he thinks Microsoft is really going to handle those first-party exclusives. It was really interesting because everyone is thinking about how are they going to do it. Are they going to do timed exclusives with the Bethesda releases? Are they going to just put them on every single platform, on PlayStation, on Nintendo? Or are they going to just keep them completely exclusive, locked to the Xbox ecosystem on PC and on the Xbox? Me personally, I really think going forward, like Phil Spencer said many times, they're just going to be looking at this on a case-by-case basis, on a game-by-game basis on how they're going to handle this. We can see how they kind of did this with their release of Minecraft as well as Ori. Now, Minecraft was such a huge community on every single platform. Microsoft allowed Minecraft to be on PlayStation, on the Nintendo Switch. And then with Ori and Moon Studios, even though Microsoft doesn't own Moon Studios, they did create a licensing and publishing agreement with them. So Ori was an exclusive to the Xbox platform, but then they released it on the Nintendo Switch as well. But that was because Microsoft allowed that. So they're going in different directions, and they're actually allowing their exclusives on multiple platforms. Now, with the acquisition of Zenimax, obviously this is way bigger than Ori, and it's bigger than Minecraft as well, just because of the amount of IPs that come out of this deal and the amount of great popular games that come out of it with tons of players that play them. So things like Fallout, Doom, Elder Scrolls, and we have the upcoming Starfield, Wolfenstein. There's so many, right? There's so many great games from Zenimax, from Bethesda, from Arcane that are coming, and they're going to be exclusive to Xbox if they want that. So Christopher Weaver, who is the former founder of Zenimax, talked about this. And right now, I mean, he's not involved with the company at all. He hasn't been since 2002, but he is kind of like a scholar. He calls himself on the outside of the industry, and he had a lot of good thoughts. So there's a bunch of questions, but some of the stuff I really wanted to talk about today was what he thinks is going to happen with the exclusives and how it's going to affect Microsoft and affect the industry going forward. So obviously, Christopher Weaver, he owned 33% of the share of Zenimax, so he made a ton of money off of this deal, but that's obviously going to make him happy about this overall. But he talks about how he thinks that with Microsoft, he believes that the executives, as he says here in the quote, are going to be responsive to Bethesda's input. However, he doesn't know that when a company like Microsoft acquires these publishers and these developers, that obviously they're going to want to in some way push ways to make as much money as possible off the game. But I think personally, with the way that Microsoft has been handling all of the other studios they've acquired and the games that they have been releasing, with them coming out day one on Game Pass and just being consumer friendly in the sense that they're not going to be, they didn't lock a lot of these games behind a paywall or anything like that when it came to Game Pass. They could have done that. They could have offered Game Pass, but then offered you to pay a couple of dollars or maybe $10 to play the games day one, and they would have made tons of money off that. But them putting them day one on Game Pass right away is a huge thing. So it leads me to believe that the executives understand the power of a subscription service, how much money they can make off a subscription service, but at the same time not exploit it to be anti-consumer and to be more consumer friendly with the way that they're doing things. Well, I honestly believe that Microsoft is just going to allow Bethesda to work in the way that they've been working over the last number of years to create the great games that they know how to make. One thing I really wanted to highlight in this is that he talks about the acquisition. He says that it's hard to determine if it's good or bad for the industry, other than the fact that if it's poorly managed, it'll be bad. If it's not poorly managed, it'll be great. But he does mention here that there are only a limited number of proven creators of AAA, and what Microsoft owns, Sony cannot get. So he's allowed to talk on this because he isn't part of the company anymore, and he is able to open up. So I don't know if he knows anything or if he's just saying that based off of exclusives and generally what happens with exclusives when companies own them. In history, they haven't put them out on other consoles, like with Sony and even in previous generations with Microsoft and with Nintendo. So I don't know if he knows anything, but this could be telling into how Microsoft is going to handle games going forward. I think that, well, most people think that they're going to do timed exclusives, and which could work, which could be okay. But the reason why people think Microsoft will still put these IPs out on other platforms is because there are so many users of them on other platforms, and they're still going to make a ton of money off doing this from owning the rights. But it would kind of, to spend $7.5 billion on a purchase and then to not keep those games as exclusive and locked to your ecosystem, it may not be the best choice, because you're going to want to get people to sign up for that Game Pass to come over to your ecosystem so that they stay there for the long run, and that's where they're going to want to play all of their games. And you definitely know that if you're putting Elder Scrolls, if you're putting Fallout, if you're putting Doom, if you're putting upcoming Starfield as exclusive, and your only way you can play this is through Xbox ecosystem, either on PC or on console, you definitely know people from PlayStation, people from Nintendo, people from PC who didn't have Game Pass, they're all going to be coming over to play those games through the Xbox ecosystem. And there's a lot of other things you need to take into account. Once you get someone into your ecosystem, once you get them locked in, they have friends on Xbox, they start getting achievements. That's one of the things that keeps me in the Xbox ecosystem, is the achievement system. They get other things that you only get within that ecosystem. They're going to want to stay there for the long run. He also goes on to mention something that a lot of people kind of forget that happened with the original Xbox, and for me it's a massive thing. It was one of the games that didn't start me in Xbox, because I didn't have an Xbox right away when this game was out, but it's one of the games that got me interested in wanting to eventually get an Xbox, which I did, and that was Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. I remember this game just being so mystical. Like, you didn't really know. I had never played a game like this before, so I wasn't really sure what it was about, but I would always talk to people about it at school, my friends that had original Xboxes, and they would always tell me how just amazing this game was, and I just needed to get my hands on it. And this was exclusively launched on the original Xbox. So Bethesda and Microsoft already have a pretty good working relationships in terms of this, and they can see the power of a game like Morrowind and what it did to get people to try out an Xbox and to get an Xbox. Obviously the brand now has been established, so it's not the same, but if you put a game like Elder Scrolls 6 on Xbox and PC exclusively through the Xbox ecosystem, like, it's going to push that ecosystem like crazy. It's one of those few games that pushes an entire platform by itself. And Christopher Weaver, being with the company at that time as they were developing this game and everything, he talks about here that, in his honest opinion, I mean, again, you have to look at all this stuff and think, well, what else is he going to say after just being purchased? But I mean, he really has nothing to lose. He doesn't have any link to it anymore. They've been bought, his shares and everything, so he has his money. It doesn't really matter. But he says, in his honest opinion, the box which the Xbox, obviously, that they made had many leaps of technical faith and built a box, in my honest opinion, that surpassed everything else at that time. So if you remember, there was the PS2, then there was the Xbox, which was his first generation, and there was the GameCube. And the Xbox was a new kid on the block, but it definitely was the more powerful system out of those three in terms of graphic fidelity, frame rates, and resolutions and all that stuff. And I know with me personally, I had a PlayStation 2 from pretty much the beginning of that generation, and then I got an Xbox after, and I noticed the difference between the two boxes. I noticed how I enjoyed third-party games more on the original Xbox over the PlayStation 2, and then it slowly started to bring me over, and it was things like Halo, Morrowind, that got me into wanting to get that Xbox, to be able to experience that power. And we may see that this generation. It's another thing that people don't mention very much, because I mean, the pre-orders have been nuts. Everybody's record sales, it's going to be nuts. Like, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are both going to fly off the shelves. They're going to be great. But I think what's got lost in this conversation is, yes, the Xbox Series X is a more powerful console, and yes, it is just by a bit, but it's still about 2 teraflops more powerful than the PlayStation 5. So you're going to see better performance on those third-party games, and it's just going to make the experience more enjoyable. And for a lot of people, we focus a lot on exclusives, but for a lot of people who don't really care about the exclusives, either on PlayStation or on Xbox, are going to be picking up a box for third-party games, and they're going to want to go where that best experience is. And on top of that, with Bethesda being obviously third party for its entire life up until now, they used to play those games where they could get the best experience as well. For a lot of people, that was on PC. But now with the Xbox Series X and how powerful it is, it may be that. So that could push consoles for the Bethesda games as well. And then finally, he finishes off this interview talking about the deal and any other thoughts that he had. And he mentioned something very interesting, which is very true. It was that the acquisition of Bungie acted as an important trigger for the success of the early Xbox, obviously with the release of Halo. And depending on how soon Bethesda can prime the Microsoft pipeline, I suspect Microsoft is looking at their playbook and looking to repeat one of its best moves. Basically saying that with Bungie creating Halo, which put and cemented Xbox on the map, the purchase of Zenimax, particularly Bethesda, is going to be that move that is going to be the counter move against Sony. And then users from around the world will be the ultimate beneficiaries of this deal. And I kind of concur with that. I kind of see what he's saying is that obviously Sony has the huge lineup of first party games, critically acclaimed, more fans, more players of them. But it's with Halo kind of the delay and everything kind of falling into the background. Gears has kind of fallen off in terms of its fan base as compared to what it was with like Gears 1, 2, and 3, and then Halo 1, 2, and 3. This could be the next move that Microsoft needs and has taken in order to counter Sony's exclusives. And I really think they are going to, with just the lineup of Bethesda games. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Let me know what you think about Christopher Weaver's comments. Let me know what you think Xbox and Microsoft are going to do with their exclusives with Bethesda games particularly. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure to stay tuned to my channel if you're interested in anything next gen, because I have the Xbox Series X, I have the PS5 on pre-order, so I'll be getting those day one. We'll be doing lots of videos on them, unboxings, comparisons, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that stuff, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned, and I'll catch you in the next video.